And the next morning they drove through the square, and one of the Jep Henson was directing traffic. They had a traffic jam. They were having a benefit to raise money to buy a piano for the school. And so they had people selling things, and they were giving the money to the Buy a Piano Fund. And I thought about, that was in 24, I think. And then I know my mother started the market day, or whatever they called it at that time, on the square, where everybody came in their pickup and had things in their pickup that they had made. It wasn't any commercial stuff. It was all
Only jelly,
a lot of
bread.
preserves and quilts, and yeah, and Ms. Monette and a bunch of pottery that she had made, and we began getting a few artists in about
And all the fresh
1950.
vegetables you could go buy. All the
Oh, and the food, yeah, that was the good part. Well, I was amazed at the amount of rock walls. Do you have them up in your neck of
Yes.
the woods? And so I was trying to figure, that's an awful lot of hard work, and how did they get there? And then if you read the figures, about a third of the county population were slaves before the Civil War. I thought, well, maybe that was the slaves that were doing that. And then I began looking into that, and all of the slaves were on the cotton fields out on the prairie, as my grandfather used to call it, on the San Marcos side. So they were all done by the ranchers, stock farmers who were living here. And part of it was to get the rocks out of the field, and part was to keep the cows from getting in the field. But they did an awful lot of stacking. And John E. Harris, who's to me the dean of the rock bin of the area, told about his father. He charged 25 cents a linear foot for a wall 4 feet high and 2 feet wide. And that's a lot of work, but he could do 5 feet and make $1.25 a day, and the going price was $1 a day for the average worker. So he was beating the system by working hard. He probably had all of his kids working too. But you know, out of that, we built what is now the Bowen Elementary School, and we hired Harold Bowen as the principal, and he was there for 26 years, and every year the school building was in better shape at the end of the year than the beginning, because at the beginning of the year he had all the students clean the school, every mark on it. And so all during the year, the kids wouldn't let anybody mess it up, because they knew they were going to clean it at the end of the year. And but the Bowens lived in the back pasture here, and he used to bring the whole school. We had 4 classrooms. We had 8 grades in 4 rooms, but they would come down and picnic and swim in Blue Hole every year. And talking to Becky Shands, she remembers some of those early days when she used to crossing Ranch Road 12 in those days was no problem. There was an occasional car, but just occasionally. But Harold Bowen made a big dent on education, because nobody ever failed, because he wouldn't let them leave school until they had caught up with whatever they were lacking, and then he would drive them home. But he wouldn't let them go home until they caught up with whatever it was they were minus. Susie Danforth is somebody we need to talk about and talk about. Susie lived, I was gone in the Marine Corps during the war, and my folks were traveling, and Susie was living here on the place with, what's the name of her horse? Not Lady Bird. Anyway, she would not live without a horse or two around, but she was such a character, and she was tough. She could handle anybody, anywhere, anytime, including Carl Scudder and and forgotten his buddy's name. The school board said they didn't have indoor plumbing when they were students, and their children didn't need them any more than they did. So Susie said, well, we'll do it ourselves then. So she got Carl and his friend to dig the septic tank or the drain field after school, the three of them working away. They were the two biggest boys. And there was a lot of hustle there because there wasn't a lot of money there. By the way, when World War II came and I left, that was about the time Eagle Rock started, now called Wood Creek. But we had a family that came in with some money, and they helped the community a whole lot. They bought the store from the Burdettes. They headed up a lot of projects, and we had the highest war bond per capita income of any town in Texas. Wimberley did. And Dave Crumley's hat one time was auctioned off and sold for $5,000 during the war, and that was $5,000 was a lot of money then. There were really, the atmosphere in Wimberley now, as it was in the old days, has always been more special than the other towns around, in my unprejudiced opinion. But during World War II, everybody joined the service, and we were proud to go. We fought for the country. I joined the Marine Corps because my father was, he was a competitor. He was an athlete in college, and he liked a good fight and wanted to go kill the Germans in World War II. So I joined the Marine Corps so I could get in the middle of it and stand up to my dad. And I got shot on Iwo Jima, which was an interesting experience, but it was with a good team. It's kind of like Wimberley is a team. Those of us that want to join the team are together. We're in a battle. Well, Clemmy and I represent the old timers in Wimberley, and it's kind of a team. We don't have a meeting, but we know each other and we respect each other. But I had been interrupted by the war, and I ended up at the University of Colorado in the engineering detachment and got married, and MF and I went to the University of Oslo, Norway to have a good adventuresome honeymoon, so that was interesting. But back to Wimberley, to summarize some things, I started talking about slavery and the rock walls and how people worked. In studying old papers and reading materials that I've had in the closet and just thinking about some of the San Marcos people, there is quite a difference between Wimberley and San Marcos. And in my mother's day, there were, I think, 5 gates to come to Wimberley. You didn't run to San Marcos too often. You didn't need anything that they had. When I was a kid, you had to back up the big hill if you had a Model A Ford, so the gas, you had to have the gas above the motor. And it had to, if you backed up, you could have the gasoline work. But anyway, San Marcos and Wimberley are different. The people in San Marcos have the black land that will grow things. It's very rich land, but Wimberley has sorry, rocky hills full of cedar, and it's a tough place to make a living. But why did the people come here? Well, San Marcos was civilized before Wimberley was. And the people that came here, like the Blackwells and the Cruises and the McQuestians and some of those early people, weren't afraid of a fight. And they worked hard. Being a stock farmer, most of them were, that settled here. A lot of trail drivers and that. But they had a real fight for an existence, and I think we need to appreciate the pioneers who settled in this rough country, because that black land was out there, but they didn't like it. They liked the adventure of having rock and cedar and animals, and most of all, the clear water that we're having a busy time protecting now to maintain the quality of our water. So Wimberley is a group of good, tough people, the basic Wimberleyite, and we're working on training the newcomers and teaching them that this town is worth fighting for.